What up? Winbush here, and today I'm excited to show you guys how to take your materials from Real Creator into Unreal Engine. Now, a couple of you guys have requested this on my channel, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so I'm starting here in Real Creator. This is the default terrain that we start with, and so I'm just gonna add a couple of filters. Come up to the right hand corner, click filters. Let's add new layer, click filters, add. Then let's make some dunes, I guess. Let's try some wavy dunes maybe. Then we click add. Then let's come down to, let's add some erosion. Yeah, something like that maybe. Erosion, yeah, something like that's cool. So I'm gonna click add and close. And now let's just add some basic textures to it. I'm going to use Real Creator textures. So if I come up here, right hand corner, hit textures, add layer, and then click textures, add. I'm going to click on directories, Real Creator, and I'm not going to actually export these particular materials. I'm actually going to use the ones from Megascans, but you can use any materials that you want. But just for photographic reference, I'm going to use the ones that are built into Real Creator. So I'm going to use this first one. It says desert. Click add. Let's see if we have some other good sand. Let's click on this one. We'll add this one as well. And we'll do a 3 stack. So let me click on this lighter one here. And I'm going to click add and close. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to go to my one that's all the way to the far right. Right underneath is a check mark. I'm going to click on that one, because I want to start masking out my second layer here. So if I turn this one off, you can see this one's my base layer. Then the second one, I'm going to come down to cavity, come down to convex. And now you can see just along the rim of the top of my terrain here, it's a little bit darker sand. And we can play around with the strength, kind of widen that a little bit, play with the steps, the step size. So it just depends on the type of look that you're looking for. So let me pull it back a little bit, something around there. Okay, so now I'm gonna click on my third texture, turn that back on, and maybe instead of convex, let's do concave. So let me click on and off, see what that's doing. It's not really doing much, so I'm gonna turn that back to none. Let's come down to maybe follow direction of the sun. There we go. So you can see now we have our little layers in here for a third layer. So let me smooth this out a little bit, like so. All right, cool. So now we just have a basic setup for some sand dunes. And now the next step is just exporting this out to Unreal. So if I come up to my upper right hand corner where it says export, click on this. And then for my surface, I want to export a raw file because Unreal can pick up on that. And then I'm going to leave these other settings the same. And for game engine, I'm going to click Unreal. And now in here, we want to flip our Y. I forget why. I just know other people always say make sure you flip your Y when you're exporting out of Real Creator for Unreal. So we're going to flip our Y. And then we're going to look over here where it says scale. We want to take notice that our scale Z is 38.02, which is important for when we import it into Unreal. So I want to click export. Then I'm just going to find where I want to save this at. Real Creator. So I'm just going to leave this saying heightmap.raw. Click save. Give us a moment to save out. Okay, now I want to come over to my heat maps. And under select type, I want to come under textures. So I'm going to click on textures, and I'm actually going to, my default one right here, I'm going to click that off, and I want to use this one as a base layer. And actually I could go over and let me go back to textures, and I can name these so that we have tag names on here. So for this one, I'm just going to name it base for my base layer. Then I'm going to click on this other texture under tag. Let's name this, we'll just name this layer 1. And then for my other one, let's name this one layer 2. Okay, like that. And I'm gonna go back to my exports, back to my heat maps. And now you can see under my layer, it has them labeled out. So I have my base layer, I have my layer 1 and my layer 2. So I'm going to check off my base layer because we don't want to make a map for that. So what this is going to be doing is basically going to be making a grayscale map for your different textures here. So you'll see as soon as I hit export. So I'm going to export and I'm going to leave it as a PNG here. So I'm going to export this, save it in the same folder, click save, give it some few moments to save out, and then I'll show you guys exactly what this heat map is exporting out. All right, cool. So you can see we have our mask layer for our layer here. So this one, it says layer 20, which will be our layer 2. And then this one will be our layer number 1. So what we're going to do is take these heat maps into Unreal, and I'm going to use Megascans, but I mean, you could use any materials that you want. You could go to texturehaven.com. There's a whole bunch of free materials there, but I'm going to get Unreal ready and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Oh yeah, before we go to Unreal, I made a mistake. Whenever we're exporting our heat maps, we wanted to flip the Y. And so come back over to select type, come down to textures, and then where it says global flip Y, make sure to check that on right there. And then I'm going to turn off my base again, hit export, save it into the folder that I want to save it into. Click save. Let me see, I want to do it this one, open, save. And now it should save it out in the correct way. So whenever we're going from World Creator to Unreal Engine, we want to flip it on the y-axis for our heat maps and for our terrain file. And so now I'll catch you guys on the flip side when I have Unreal open. Okay, so I have Unreal Engine opened up now. I'm going to click on my floor. I'm going to delete that. Now I'm going to come over to my left-hand side under Landscape, click on Import File, and I'm going to find the height map file that we created in World Creator. There we go, so heightmap.raw. Let's click open. And then down here under scale, remember when I was saying remember that number out of World Creator? This is where we want to type that in. So my Z scale was, I believe, 38.03 or 02, one of the two. But I believe it is around there. And now I'm going to click down to import. And now I have my terrain in here. I'm going to up my camera speed so I can zoom out faster. So there we go. I'm just holding down the Alt key, holding down the right click on my mouse and zooming out. So now you can see we have our sand dunes in Unreal. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of this grid pattern later. But first, let's focus on the textures. And so like I was saying before, I'm going to be using Megascans, but feel free to use anything you want. I know texturehaven.com has a whole bunch of free plugins on there. Or not plugins, but textures on there. But I like the Megascans library. So I'm going to type in sand under bridge. And let's see. So I want 3 different kind of sands. So I guess I could use this Thai and gravel here. Let me go to Unreal. And project location is exactly where I made my project. I'm using version 4.23. All right, and 4K is fine. So I'm going to just click export. Okay, export successful. And let me find some other sand in here. Maybe this one, sand debris. Same thing. Click on export. Looks like this one has to convert the file, so this might take a minute or two. But while that's going, let me see if I can find some other sand here. Yeah, I don't want to go too crazy, so maybe I'll just use this one here. But I'm going to wait for this to convert over. And once I have all my sand exported into Unreal, we'll get started by making our landscape material. Okay, so now I have my Megascan materials inside of Unreal. You see I have my 3 different materials down here under Megascan surfaces. So I have my Thai sand. I have my sand debris. So now what I want to do is we want to make a landscape material for our terrain. So I'm going to, let's make a new folder. I guess I'll just name this one landscape material. All right, cool. So I'm gonna double click on that. And then inside my folder here, let's right click and come under material. And I'm just going to name this one landscape material. Okay, so now I'm going to double click on this, and this brings us into node land. And so now I have my landscape node over here, and we want to start connecting our materials to there. And so first I want to right click in this grid area, just type in landscape, and I want to come down to landscape layer blend. Okay, so now that I have that, and let me make this full screen. There we go. Okay, so now on our left hand side, you'll see under material expression landscape, we want to go to layers and click on the plus sign. And we have 3 materials, so we want to click it 3 times. So now we have 3 layers, and we can actually go down and name these layers. So if I click the arrow button down, go to layer name, and I'm gonna name this one base. And then I'm gonna go down to my next one. I'm gonna name this one layer 1, and this will correspond with the heat maps that we made. So I'm gonna name that one layer 1, and then I'm going to name this one layer 2. Cool. So now we have this name. You can see they correlate with our node here that we made. So we have layer base, layer 1, and layer 2. Yeah. So and now let's bring on our textures to connect to these nodes. So this one I want to do under base color. I'm going to connect it to base color, and let me shrink this down because I want to drag and drop some of our Megascan materials that I brought in here into this node. So let me click on Megascans, click on surfaces, and I guess I'll start with the Thai sand because it's the first one. So I'm going to bring in my albedo, and then I'm going to go and connect that to layer base. And then let me go back to my surface, come down to sand debris, bring in my albedo for that one, connect this one to layer 1, and I'm going to repeat for the last sand here, bring in my albedo, and bring this into layer 2. Okay, so now we want to click apply, and let this calculate out, click save for good measure. So now I want to go back to that folder where I made my landscape material. And let me click on landscape up here in my hierarchy. Let me scroll down to where we see landscape here under our bottom hierarchy. And we see a slot says landscape material. So I'm going to click and drag that into here. And you can see we have like a black shiny material across our landscape. That's because we have to let it know what materials go where. So under, let me see, it's under paint here. So in my upper left hand corner beside my sculpt, click on paint. And now you can see we have our materials that we just dropped into our material node. And so for this first one, I want to click on non-weight blend layer. And then, yeah, I guess I could save it into that folder. Just click OK. Give us a second and we should see our material. Yeah, there we go. Now we have our sand material across our dune. So now for our next 2, we can actually bring in our mask for those. So I'm gonna go back to my layer 1, and this time I want to use a weighted blend normal. Click OK. Okay, sorry about that. So that error that popped up, I actually forgot that Unreal hates spaces, which is good because I can show you guys how to fix that. So I was coming up with that error, but if I go back into my landscape material and I click on my layer blend, remember when I was naming my layers here? So it says layer name, layer 1, and I put a space in there between the layer and the 1, which Unreal doesn't like spaces. Usually you want to do underscores, but I'm just going to backspace. Actually, I'm just going to name this one 1. And then I'm going to go to my other one and just name it 2. Okay, so now it says layer 1 and layer 2. So no spaces in there at all. Even when you're naming your layers, it doesn't like spaces at all. So I'm going to click apply. Click save. And now let me come back under my paint and come under 1 here. Now if I click on this, now I could do the weighted blend normal. And I'm just going to save it under my landscape material folder. Okay, so now it's let me do it. So again, Unreal doesn't like spaces when you're naming stuff out. So if you need to make a space, use an underscore. So now let me right click on my layer that I just imported and click import from file. And so I'm going to click on this one, my layer number 1 for my heat map. And click OK. Give that a second to pipe through. Okay, so now you can see our heat map is across our terrain. I'm going to do the next material here. I'm going to click on weighted blend normal. Same thing, save it in my folder. And that allows me to import my heat map. Click OK. Boom. So now we have our heat maps piped into Unreal. And if you really zoom into our terrain, you can see that we're starting to get a lot of patterns in our materials. So if I come back to my material landscape here, into my nodes, let me right click on my grid and hit landscape. And we want to do landscape layer coordinates. And we want to pipe this into our UVs. Now you could do this several ways. You can actually make a landscape coordinate for each one of your textures here if you want. Or you could just pipe it into all three, depending on what you're doing. Because what this allows us to do is actually scale up our material. So if you look over here in the lower left-hand corner under mapping scale, let's exaggerate this so we can see what's happening. But if I bring it up to 20, I'm going to click apply. Give us a second, and you'll see that our textures are going to be really large on here. See, now when I zoom in, oops. So now when I zoom in, you can see our textures are a lot larger and there's less patterns. And if you want to get rid of the shininess, I mean, you would just follow the same exact steps. You would add a roughness to it. And so actually let me copy my layer blend. So I'm going to hit Control C, then Control V. And I'm going to drag this into my roughness. And then same thing, I'm going to find my roughness patches that correlate with my albedos. So let me come back to my folders down here, go to Megascans, come down to surfaces, and let's start with the tie one. So I'm going to drag in my tie roughness, and that was my base layer. I can actually drag my landscape coordinates into my UVs for this as well. Now let me find my next one, my sand debris, drag in my roughness. Then I'm going to go back to my other sand debris, drag in this roughness, attach it to layer 2. Let's pipe these all in with the landscape coordinates. Sorry, it's starting to get a little bit messy in here. Like so. And then you can see where I'm going with this. So if you have specular and you have normals, same thing. You just pipe them all in with this layer blend layer. Add your landscape coordinates, hit apply, click save. Then we exit out. Now we have our roughness applied to our material. And like I was saying, for your normal maps and the other stuff that you want to pipe in, it's the same exact workflow. So basically, this is how you would get your materials from World Creator into Unreal. So I know a couple of you guys were asking how to do this. Hopefully this helped you guys out, and this just get you set into Unreal, and hopefully you make some cool terrains out of this. So hopefully this is the video that you guys were looking for to help you out. Just as another tip, if you want to get rid of those grid lines, you have to go up and actually build your lighting. And after it calculates your lighting and everything, then it's going to get rid of those grid lines, and your materials are going to look nice and great on your terrain. So if this did help you out, make sure you leave me a comment down below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. And until next time, keep creating. I'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.